On the 20th of May 2024, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, made a major announcement. He told the world that he was seeking the arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity during Israel's brutal 7-month invasion of Gaza. Unsurprisingly, both Israel and its Western allies were furious.
Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that.
Is a moral outrage of historic proportions. What a travesty of justice, what a disgrace.
To many observers, this was just another clear example of Western double standards and hypocrisy.
You cannot make this stuff up. The hypocrisy, the hypocrisy, the hypocrisy.
But these double standards are more than just an embarrassing look for the West. It has major consequences for the future of the international order and our general safety. And to understand why, we need to take a look at the history of the ICC and why it was created in the first place. The International Criminal Court was set up on July 1st, 2002, after countries of the world agreed on a treaty known as the Rome Statute. Based in The Hague in the Netherlands, its purpose is to prosecute individuals for the most serious international crimes: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression. The idea of an international criminal court gained traction after the devastation of World War II, when the international community recognized the need for a structured and cooperative approach to maintain peace and security. Several key institutions and legal frameworks were established to create a rules-based international order, including the United Nations, the Geneva Conventions, and eventually the ICC. And the creation of the ICC was celebrated as a major step towards international justice and accountability. It promised that those who commit the most serious of crimes will be punished, hoping to deter those considering doing them. However, over time, the ICC has been subject to a lot of criticism. One of its key criticisms is that it only went after leaders from small, weak states, mostly in Africa, while ignoring crimes committed by the richer and more powerful states. And this can be seen if we look at which cases the ICC has pursued. Its first 8 cases were against individuals and governments in African states: Uganda, the DRC, the Central African Republic, Sudan, Kenya, Libya, Ivory Coast, and Mali. Until January 2016, all 9 situations which the ICC had been investigating were in African countries. And during that same period, the ICC made little effort to investigate war crimes committed by, for example, the US and UK in Iraq, Afghanistan, or Libya. This led to widespread accusations from African leaders of bias, and the ICC being a Western imperial tool to punish former colonies rather than a court with a global mandate.
Africa feels targeted, rightly or wrongly.
It is a court created for Africans, and it is used mostly by Europe to manipulate African politics. You cannot tell me.
However, in recent years, the ICC has been making some bolder moves against the more powerful states. On the 17th of March 2023, the ICC issued arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. The warrant against Putin was the first against a leader of a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. At the time, many Western countries backed the ICC for issuing an arrest warrant against the Russian president, a country they had been increasingly at odds with in recent years. Now, compare this with the reaction when the ICC issued arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister. This time, many Western leaders, especially in the US, blasted the ICC for its decision against Israel. So what was different? The fact that for the first time, the ICC decided to go after an ally of the West for war crimes. Western leaders were happy to abide by international law and back the ICC when it served their interests, but rallied against the very same institution when it went against them. The realization of double standards seems to have reached the thoughts of some European states, however, with some backing the independence of the ICC. But the general sentiment across the West, particularly in the US, the so-called leader of the free world, was that the ICC was wrong to do this. To those outside the West, it was another clear example of their hypocrisy. It seemed that international law is something that the West are happy to preach but refuse to be held to. And it seems like they aren't wrong to think like this. Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan recently told CNN that an unnamed official had told him that the ICC was built for Africa and for folks like Putin, rather than being an independent or impartial court.
And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me.
And now there are even reports that the US and UK are planning to sanction ICC officials for their investigations into Israel. Michael Becker, a professor of international human rights at Trinity College Dublin, says that these attacks only lend further support to the damaging narrative that the ICC is an exercise in selective justice dictated entirely by politics, carries out its mandate with an African bias, or is simply a new incarnation of victor's justice. If the West wants other countries to follow a rules-based system and respect international law, then they need to practice what they preach. They need to respect the rules even when it doesn't favour them. This means, for example, letting the ICC go ahead with its investigation into their ally Israel and their own crimes. This is best put by Professor Becker, who says, the values that underlie the ICC do not allow for one set of rules for democratically elected leaders and another set of rules for everyone else. Some European states have realised this and have chosen to respect the ICC's independence, but the damage has already been done due to the actions taken by the US and UK, among others. The more respect for a rules-based order there is, the less likely that these states will think about breaking it. This means less human rights abuses, less instability, and less conflict. Yet the world seems to be on a path to a world where there will no longer be a rules-based system, as the rules simply don't mean anything anymore. It seems we are going back to a world where might is right, where states furiously compete with each other to be the most powerful and get their own way. Unfortunately, those competitions often end up being very violent and messy.